Hey everyone, Davey here. Well, we did it. We made it through an entire season of ABC's and Joss Whedon's new show, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And, wow, it's been quite a ride. And I'll still stick with what I've said, that the first half or so of the season was very by the numbers, but once Captain America the Winter Soldier arrived in theaters and the Marvel Cinematic Universe took a really drastic turn, that's when this show definitely picked up and made us anticipate this finale even more. And this finale is entitled Beginning of the End, which harkens back to that pivotal episode where things changed, end of the beginning, so it's very appropriately named. And of course, if you are new to this whole thing, this review will contain spoilers for the episode as well as the season in general, so to speak. So if you have not caught up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., then please do so, come back and watch this video. So the first half, or maybe even the first third of this episode, mostly consists of Coulson's team making the moves on that compound at Cybertech, and it's pretty basic, it's pretty by the numbers, and there wasn't anything that really gripped my attention a whole lot. In fact, I'll go as far as to say that there were some questionable lines of dialogue in that first half of the episode. I don't know what happened with the writing, but some of the dialogue got just a little bad. And that's something that we haven't seen on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for some time. I mean, I personally cannot remember the last time that there was an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where somebody would say a particular line and I'm like, that was kind of bad. Despite there being some that were kind of cool, especially Agent May's, "No, I'm not ready to change the world, but I'm ready to kick some ass." The most interesting part of this first half was Garrett. After being injected with that quote-unquote miracle drug, he's taken a very psychotic turn. You know, he's drawing these diagrams that don't make any sense. He's like, yeah, I feel great. And it's something expected. It's something that I was okay with because it really made me feel like I was watching a comic book, but not in a bad way. Because sometimes I say that in a bad way with certain movies, mainly like recently The Amazing Spider-Man 2, something like that. But here, it felt like a comic book in a very nostalgic way, where you got this character that was very grounded, but after he gets injected with something similar to how some of our heroes' origins start off, he takes this turn that's very unlike him. So I was welcome to Garrett taking this very psychotic turn in this episode, and I'm actually kind of glad that they saved it up for the season finale and not dragged it on too long, because I felt like they used the right amount of crazy Garrett in this episode. But it isn't until everybody starts fighting that the momentum picks up, everything gets pumped up, and the bad dialogue is out of the way, and everything just gets going, with a few exceptions. There's a few moments here and there where I felt like, okay, we don't need this. It wasn't so much that there was bad dialogue like in the first half, but there were moments where we had dialogue and we just didn't need it. Like, okay, why are these people talking? Come on, well, you know, fight. But there's one thing that connects these two halves, and that is the whole thing with Fitz and Simmons being at the bottom of the ocean in that little containment unit, or whatever the hell that was, that little pod that ejected from the bus in the previous episode. And this was the moment where they could really have packed an emotional punch. That scene between Fitz and Simmons, and Fitz finally confessing to Simmons that, hey, I kind of like you more than a friend. You know, it was actually kind of emotional for me. You know, and Simmons' reaction to that, what made it, you know, a little bit more painful, because you can kind of tell that she might not feel the same way. I mean, she just said, hey, you're my best friend in the world, and she didn't really hesitate to say anything that might imply that there's other feelings there that Fitz actually does have for Simmons. So it made that whole scene very painful, and I was just waiting for that scene to end with just Simmons rising to the surface, and we lost one of our own. And that would have been very impactful, and it would have made the season finale a whole lot better. Granted, it's a little morbid to say that I wanted Fitz to die, but it's something that we've not only grown accustomed to, being the fact that this is a Joss Whedon property. I mean, you know how much Joss Whedon loves to kill off characters, so I was fully expecting Fitz to bite the dust in this, or bite the water in this episode, but it doesn't happen. They both survive, and that really bugged me. I'm like, really? You're not gonna go through with it? Okay, fine. Let's have them get saved or whatever. But if you're gonna be saved by anybody, it's got to be by Nick Fury. That's right, Samuel L. Jackson returns in the season finale, and that's the only way that you can make your season finale even better, by bringing the man himself, Samuel L. Jackson, in to reprise his role as Nick Fury, leading us to us knowing where he went after Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which coincidentally, a bit of a convenience, but I'm actually gonna go ahead and look past it because it's freaking Nick Fury. It's Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury coming back. Awesome. But it is a little bit of a convenience that Nick Fury was looking into this particular subject matter with Garrett and Ward and their involvement in Hydra and what they were doing with cybertech right after dealing with everything that happened in the Winter Soldier. But before I get into that, let me just wrap up this thing with Fitz and Simmons. I do think that it's actually rather interesting and something that definitely has me looking forward to Season 2. It has been greenlit. That's awesome. Season 2 is happening. I don't know when specifically. I believe maybe in September, since that's when Season 1 premiered last year, so I'm guessing September. I don't know yet. But I do think it's rather intriguing that they're not revealing what is up with Fitz. We know that he's alive, but you can tell from Simmons' face that he's just not the same. And we're going to have to see that in the next season. I don't know if it's going to be in the pilot episode or if it's going to be later on down the line, but I'm definitely interested in seeing where Fitz ended up. But yes, Nick Fury returns in this season finale of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and he was cool. I mean, and I'm glad that it wasn't a cameo. He literally had somewhat of a supporting role in this episode. It wasn't that little one scene that he had earlier in this season, like in the 4th or 5th episode, I can't remember. But it had a legitimate role in this, and he was cool. And of course, Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury never fails. I mean, he owns this role in terms of the cinematic universe, seeing him up on the big screen and now on the small screen. He's always awesome. Now, I will feel that, like I said, his involvement in this episode, or his involvement in the plot, is a little bit convenient, but what bugs me more is the fact that I already knew that he was going to be in this episode before I even watched it, because I'm one of those viewers, those TV watchers that I don't watch sneak previews of next week's episode. It's only a week. I only have to wait a week to watch the next episode, so I'm not gonna look at these trailers for the next episode or these little sneak peeks that are only 30 seconds long. No, I'm not gonna watch that. Whenever an episode of either The Walking Dead or back when it was on Breaking Bad would end, and they had that little bit during the end credits that say next week on Breaking Bad or Walking Dead, I turn it off. I don't watch that. So I turn off Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right before they show that. But because we have this wonderful thing that is called the internet and Twitter and Facebook, people gotta post shit. And because of that, I already knew that Samuel L. Jackson was going to be in this episode as Nick Fury. And if that wasn't enough, we have to have this little title card at the beginning of the episode that says, Special Guest Appearance by Samuel L. Jackson. Could that not have been cut out and put at the end, during the end credits, where it says, Special Guest Appearance by Samuel L. Jackson? I mean, if for those people who hardly go on the internet, they could have been surprised, but because they see that little thing at the beginning of the episode, they're like, oh hey, Nick Fury's in this episode, oh cool. And I guess they are better off than I am, because they haven't seen the internet, so they still have to wait those few minutes to get to where Nick Fury's going to be in this episode and how he's going to look like, which I really did appreciate that he looked like he did at the end of Captain America, where he's not S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore, so like he puts it, he's going to be everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. So that was fully appreciated. But I know that this is a battle that's just not going to be able to be won. Us, the people who want to be surprised going into a movie or a television show, and the marketers. But it's when everybody starts fighting and antagonizing each other and staring each other down that I felt like things really picked up. Even though I will say, like I said, I didn't think it was really necessary for Coulson and Fury to have this little exchange of dialogue. Even though it wasn't bad, I didn't feel like it was fully necessary to be there while they're in the middle of what seems to be a fight. You know, I'm like, what is this? We need this right now. And I felt like that was a little bit too prolonged. But anyways, what was interspliced with that was this really badass fight between Melinda May, Agent May, and Ward. She was not kidding when she told Sky that I'm gonna harness all this anger towards Ward and I'm just gonna unleash it on him. She was not joking. She just came out of nowhere and just started pelting. Okay? At one point I thought she was gonna grab a shovel. If you've been on the internet, you know what I'm talking about. And like I said, she was not holding back. She was about to use a freaking saw blade at him. And she ended up using a staple gun on his foot. So I was like, whoa. And at any moment, I was expecting things to get kind of very severely brutal when you involve things like staple guns and saw blades. Especially when earlier in the episode we saw Garrett rip out a rib from a guy's chest who was played by Glenn Marshauer. I recognize that guy from video games and the Transformer movies. You've seen him around. But because we saw that earlier in the episode, I felt like, could we see Ward die in this fight? But he doesn't. And it actually did bug me that Ward didn't have any sort of repentance. You know, he didn't do this thing where he had that last bit of humanity in him to sacrifice himself for the better of the team. But on the upside, they solidified him as an actual villain. Like, you know, he's straight up bad. Even until that very last frame that he is in this episode. So, will we see him again in Season 2? Probably. But he'll definitely be known as Ward the villain from here on out. And like Gary called it, the tag team match, quote unquote, between Garrett, Deathlock, Fury, and Coulson, I almost forgot his name, was very interesting, and I loved how it wrapped up with Deathlock finally being liberated. I do feel like it's just a tad bit too convenient for Sky to just have easily hacked into his system, but then again, she was finally granted access into that system when she infiltrated Cybertech and she confronted that guy with the beard who was there just like Deathlock was. He was being forced there because they were keeping his wife or girlfriend or whatever. So Sky was able to use his Deathlock's son, Michael Peterson's son, to be able to liberate him and say, hey, you don't have to do this anymore. And sure enough, he is the one to take out Garrett. And I thought that was wrapped up rather nicely. Now, they completely contradict this and have, I don't know what, like, okay, there was a part of me that felt, and I know this sounds a little too graphic and disturbing, but there was a part of me that wishes that Deathlock would have pulped, so to speak, Garrett to make things like for him to get the comeuppance, because like I said, in the past 2 or so episodes we've definitely got a good sense of how evil Garrett can be. So to have Deathlock literally crush his head down with his foot would have been very good to see, very justified. But he ended up just getting his knocked out or something, and I don't know, like, that didn't make any sense. Like, he stepped on his head, but then later on we see him with his eyes open and it looks like nothing happened to him, and then later on he comes back and I'm like, what is this bullshit? Really? He's alive and we're gonna have him in Season 2? Okay, but then BAM! Coulson comes out of nowhere and blasts him to bits, and I'm like, ha! The Whedon team strikes again, and that was definitely a moment that had me laughing for some time. And while on the subject of the comedic sides to this episode, I did think that it was a nice form of levity, so to speak, to have Coulson confront Fury about what happened with him in the Tahiti Project in a comedic way. Like, okay, you know, we've had our fair share of drama with that subplot throughout the season. I think it's time to go ahead and have it wrap up in a nice little happy manner with him just saying, it was stupid. It was stupid and wrong and cruel, and it was stupid. I don't know. I loved that whole exchange, and Coulson's remarks towards him being one of the Avengers, I thought that was really nice. It makes me feel like I should have Coulson here. Somewhere here. Coulson should be right here. I'll tape him right here. But the biggest detail that scene led to was that Fury wants Coulson to start S.H.I.E.L.D. again, which will be quite difficult to do, but I definitely want to see how it's done, which will probably happen in Season 2. And if it happens in Season 2, it will probably have something to do with what happens with S.H.I.E.L.D. or the new S.H.I.E.L.D. in Avengers Age of Ultron, because chances are that Avengers Age of Ultron will be released around the time that Season 2 might get wrapped up. Should it be spread out like season 1 was, with the beginning in September and then later on concluding the season in May. But when Fury called Coulson director, that just made me go, wow, Coulson's gonna be the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is awesome. I don't know, out of all the things that last half of the finale dropped on us that will lead us into season 2, I think that was the one that I found to be the coolest, of having Coulson literally start S.H.I.E.L.D. from scratch. And who's going to be at his side? Patton Oswalt, once again returning as Koenig. Now, I'm calling him Koenig because his name is now Billy Koenig and not Eric, who he recognizes to have passed away. So are they twin brothers or are they clones? I would really love for them to be clones, because that would, I don't know, just go with the whole motif of this whole universe, with Fury bringing back Coulson using that alien DNA. And I don't know, it would just make sense for them to be clones or androids or something like that, which people believed Coulson to be. There was a point when me and everybody else was speculating that maybe Coulson is some sort of robot and that's how he got brought back to life after the events of the Avengers. But I would really love for Koenig to be a clone rather than to be convenient twin brothers that were in different places at once. So with that, the episode concludes with just 2 more lead-ups into Season 2. One is Coulson being able to replicate that little design that Garrett was starting on the door, which makes sense because Coulson and Garrett had the same drug in his system, but because of their psychosis, they reacted to it differently. But Coulson is able to replicate this design. What does this design mean, and how is Coulson going to be able to use it for his designs to recreate S.H.I.E.L.D.? That's very interesting. And the other one is that Reyna, that was her name, Reyna, who we see throughout this episode, and we learn that she's the one who flies away with the Gravitonium along with Quinn, finds Sky's father. Sky's father's still out there, and he's like covered in blood or something, I don't know. But she finds him and tells him straight up, hey, I found your daughter. Which reveals to us why she was so interested in Sky. At first I thought that maybe she would have the same kind of undiscovered power that Sky has inside of her, which Reyna alluded to once again in this episode, to Ward later on in the latter half that we're talking, before she took off with the Gravitonium. But it turns out that Reyna simply just knew Sky's father, and that's why she had interest in her. And now we're gonna see more of that play out in Season 2. So an awful lot of things got dropped on us in that last 10 or so minutes of this episode. And almost all of them, actually quite all of them, were very welcome. And they're things that I definitely want to see fleshed out in Season 2. Now, knowing that Season 2 has been confirmed, I have yet to know and to research when it's actually going to start. My assumption is in September, just like Season 1 was. But I think they did a good job of having us build anticipation for the next season. So, was this episode a good one and a good finale? Yes, but it's definitely not one of the strongest episodes in the season, especially after the huge turn that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has taken with the reveal of Hydra within S.H.I.E.L.D. in Captain America the Winter Soldier. What I perceive to be the biggest advantage that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has seen throughout its first season. And I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a great show. This is a really great show. It started off as simply just a kind of good show with its case of the week scenarios and not having a firm focus on where it wanted to go, but thanks to Captain America the Winter Soldier, it definitely has a focus now. Now, is my worry for there being another case of the week type of thing going on with every episode in Season 2 still there? Like, am I still worried that that's going to repeat again in Season 2? Yeah. But because of the fact that Coulson wants to genuinely build S.H.I.E.L.D. back up, I feel like maybe they found a way to not do that again. Hopefully we see more bold decisions and gripping moments in Season 2 that we did manage to experience in that, halfway, 2/3 mark with the big Hydra reveal, and not conveniences as well as characters not getting killed off that maybe should have been killed off in order to pack an emotional punch, such as Fitz and Ward, in the next season. So because of that, I'm giving the beginning of the end, also known as the season finale for season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, an 8 out of 10. Definitely a good episode and definitely a good way to wrap up the season, but not necessarily one of the strongest episodes of that season. But definitely one that had enough things in it to make me excited for the next one. And trust me, I am definitely excited. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of the season finale for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I guess I'll see you guys later, because I definitely do not know when season 2 will premiere. My assumption, like I said before, will probably be in September. But until then, continue watching my videos, subscribe if you haven't done so, and I'll see you guys later.